'Cause we speak bold, ain't tripping on the haters. It could take freedom from a cold dead hands. We're locked and loaded for the last dance. 'Cause we're the new American gangsters, ready to die for this land.
Good morning, Vietnam. Oh, shit. I'm sorry. I've been watching too much TV. Too much caffeine, too.
It's afternoon, Brian, and he's cut off from the coffee.
Good evening. We want to welcome you all to, what is this, episode 5 of
Yeah,
We
this is
the
our
People
fifth one.
USA Alliance's podcast, where we bring you as up-to-date as we can get information about what is taking place in Maricopa County, the state of Arizona, and your elections. And what has been happening is absolutely startling. Isn't that right, Shelby?
Look, absolutely. If you checked out our last episode, our data engineer, our IT director, he was able to show that signature verification is being conducted at rates that are absolutely humanly impossible. And so I'm thinking Maricopa County needs to either be recommended for a Guinness Book of World Records, or we've got some serious problems going on in signature verification at Maricopa County.
Well, I think I got to tell you, I think this is exactly the playbook that Katie Hobbs wants, because the Arizona legislature, both the House and the Senate, passed legislation that would require mail-in ballots to be submitted on the Friday prior to the election. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And would that then have given them a sufficient amount of time to verify all signatures that came in prior to Election Day?
It would have put us closer to the Florida model, giving us the opportunity to get all the mail-in ballots done during that extraordinarily large early voting window, and then allowing the county to focus on day of elections and only day of elections, which would have reduced the burden and flip things over. I mean, look, we've been talking about this for a long time. Signature verification is a system designed to fail.
Well, let me ask you a question, because I think it's interesting. One of the things we're going to point out tonight, we're going to talk about Katie Hobbs and her huge conflict of interest in the 2020 election, right? But it's even worse than people know. It's even worse than I was reporting during the 2022 election, when I was urging somebody to do something about Katie Hobbs, both running the statewide election apparatus as well as running her campaign for governor, right? And so I just really forgot where I was going to go with that. But what we're going to talk about is this conflict of interest is far deeper than anybody knows, than we knew. And is it possible then, let me ask you this question, and maybe we could ask Chris as well, right? If you are tied into the election machinery, right, you know everything about how many ballots have come back, right? You know everything about how many Republican ballots have come back, everything about how many Democrat ballots have come back, other party independents have come back, right? You know all that
Absolutely.
information.
Well, that's what the EMS system is designed to take all that data
Right.
and to culminate it. And they claim that they're not generating those reports because it's actually illegal now based on the timeline extension
Right.
bill. But none of the county recorders have complied with that statute and actually published the system log files to prove that they didn't do any pre-tabulation reporting.
And so if you're a campaign and you're getting access to this data, would you be able to then harvest a bunch of ballots at the last minute that you could cram into the system?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so maybe that's what Katie Hobbs wants, because I don't know. I don't think, I would hope Katie Hobbs wouldn't stand a chance in hell of winning re-election, especially the way she loses money. Did she lose the money? Is anybody investigating that in Arizona?
They're claiming that they're investigating,
Yeah.
but at this time, there's really no information being provided. Nobody's grilling her. The media sure the heck isn't talking about it, right? But we've got how much money in the governor's budget just missing,
Yeah.
just gone, and then she goes to our legislature and asks for them to give her the budget money to cover her deficits
Mhm.
so she can continue to spend well outside
Right.
the budget or her authority.
Right. Well, and you got to wonder how much of that money she's spending on the illegal immigration, defensive illegal immigration problem, because she just vetoed legislation again, didn't she? Was it today that would have allowed state and local law enforcement agents to assist?
Assist at the border.
Right.
Yep.
Well, you know who I think the biggest coward of a politician in the state of Arizona is?
I'm going to guess based on our conversations, and I'm thinking Adrian Fontes.
Adrian Fontes is the biggest coward in the state of Arizona as far as politicians go, right? Adrian Fontes, he came out a little while ago and said, "Oh, I'm going to run for Raul Grijalva's seat," right? I mean, geez, I don't even think they had him in a box at the time, did they?
Probably not. I
Right.
think it was in like
And-
48 hours.
And Adrian Fontes was all over that seat. He wants that congressional seat, right? What happened?
The Grijalva dynasty was already tapped. Everybody knew the reason they had extended that and allowed him to even run again because
Yeah.
the man had stage 4 cancer. He was
Right.
already dying. Was they wanted to hold that seat for a special election for his daughter to fill his shoes.
Right.
And the Democrat apparatus had already tapped it,
Mhm.
and Adrian Fontes had no say so in the matter.
Right. I mean, this is pretty illustrative of the Democratic Party. As I glare at Steve for constantly telling me about microphone management. But anyway, I'll stop glaring at Steve. But the Democratic Party is exceptionally anti-democratic, isn't it? It's very top-down driven.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know if anybody saw the recent headlines of what's going on in the Democrat Party, but Mark Kelly,
Uh-huh.
Katie Hobbs, Chris Mays, Ruben Gallego, and a bunch of the most prominent Arizona Democrats had endorsed the previous chair for Arizona Democrat Party chairman. And she should have been a shoo-in, but the Democrat Party itself rose up and the grassroots in the Democrat Party voted in another gentleman to be the state party chair.
Uh-huh.
And now they're at war with each other. The elitists and the Democrat Party
Right.
here in Arizona are saying, we're not going to help you.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, you were only elected because you are the backlash of the Black community rising up against the Hispanic community. And so now you've got a state chair who's saying, my party is racist.
Yeah.
And they're trying to control it. They sent an email, Senator Kelly's office sent an email to the state party chair saying, if you don't fire your executive director in the next 24 hours, we won't help you fundraise.
Huh. Well, so Senator Kelly's trying to put down the Black caucus of the Democratic Party. Is that what you're saying?
That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah.
It'll be an interesting unfold for sure.
That's interesting. Yeah, you know what I would challenge Adrian Fontes to do. I would challenge you to demonstrate just how democratic the Democratic Party is, right? Get off your cowardice little horse. Declare yourself for that congressional seat because there is no such thing as a hereditary seat in the United States of America. But unfortunately, there are a lot of seats that seem to be hereditary, right? You have Grijalva, it's going to go to his daughter. Oh, no, it's his daughter's seat. You can't run, right?
Yep.
We got to keep this in the family, right? And that's like It's like Senator Murkowski in Alaska. Do you know when she took office?
I don't. No, not off.
When her daddy retired in 2020.
Well, there you
Right.
go.
I think it was 2020. What year is this?
20, 25.
Oh, wow. No, it was,
25.
it was, damn. We're alive here for the last 20 years.
This is not a cognitive test.
No, I mean, now this was way back in 2000 and something.
Yeah.
And she takes, Lisa Murkowski, she takes daddy's seat. And she is about as anti-Trump rhino, anti-Alaska rhino that you get, because it's let's keep governance in the family. And isn't that why we told the Brits to go pound sand a long time ago?
Right. Well, the political, royal, and elitist families are still trying to maintain control here. Look at like the McCain dynasty, the
Oh, yeah.
Bush dynasty. You look at these different families that go through, and you're exactly right. This is why we declared Part of why we declared liberation from the Brits is we don't want royalty.
Yeah, we don't want hereditary Congress.
No.
But it's still very largely the Democratic Party is driven by these elitists at the top, many of them who have national security ties, and that's who gets to choose who runs. And so, Adrian Fontes, you should buck that trend, get on your damn horse, and run for the seat you really want to run for. That's what you ought to do.
And in the meantime, save Arizona by vacating the Secretary of State seat.
Yeah, no doubt. Save Arizona for sure. Right. Yeah. Arizona needs to be saved from what's been happening. Well, we want to get a little bit into what's been happening.
Yeah. So one thing we do want to talk about before we talk about the public records and what's happening recently is the file deletions that were discovered back in 2020.
Yeah, this is a huge issue, and basically what happens? The American people, actually the people of the state of Arizona, they watched the 2020 elections, right? And it's one of those things where you go to bed and you wake up the next morning and somebody had thrown the other switch, right? And so a man who could not have won the 2020 election wound up winning, quote unquote, the 2020 election. We knew immediately that something significant was amiss, right? It's like, and I'm just going to throw this out there, right? The 20,000 ballots to arrive at Runbeck after the election was over, right? I've never said this publicly because I've been very adamant about getting Runbeck's loading dock video. If I had to guess by now, based on what I'm seeing right now, is that video no longer exists. It's been deleted.
Oh, I'm confident of that.
It's gone.
Yeah.
Because it would show one of two things, right? It would show trucks driving up and dropping ballots off on the day after the election. You'd be able to count the trays, the number of racks, and estimate, were there 18,000 ballots on that truck on the day after the election? Either that happened and Runbeck could show the American people what happened, and they were just accepting ballots from Maricopa County, right? That's their only job, to accept them and to process them, right? Or they didn't receive a delivery of ballots, right?
Right.
It's entirely possible that those ballots were printed on site after election, right? What happened in 2020 is hugely significant, and that's what we're trying to get to the bottom of. We do have some, and I think when we bring Kim in, we can talk more about this. But we have just recently learned that all of the pre-2020 election emails for Maricopa County are gone. They no longer have, or so they claim, right? That's a substantial amount of information about planning taking place in the election. And what we're going to talk about at the end of our show, it raises even more significant issues because of what they're doing. and what we know they're doing now. But the deletion of the database. So you participated in the audit, right?
Absolutely.
Now tell people what the audit was.
Okay, so for those that don't know, after 2020, there was a big grassroots fight. Steve and I and we the people were a big part of that big fight to convince the legislature to force Maricopa County Board of Supervisors to audit the election. And once that happened and the courts ruled that the Senate had the ability to enforce those subpoenas, then Maricopa County Board of Supervisors was forced to turn over all of the information and the ballots in relation to the 2020 election. And there was a massive audit. It took place at the Coliseum, the State Fair Coliseum in downtown Phoenix. And Brian, you were part of that as well.
Yep.
And during that audit, there was a review of the servers. And at that time, Ben Cotton with the IT department for the audit discovered multiple files were deleted from the server directory and the server database. And that information got leaked public. And so, should we bring Kimberly on? You want to bring her on now, or you want to go through this first?
Now let's bring her on.
All right.
Why not?
Hey, Steve, can you bring Kimberly on for us? So,
Kimberly, please join. Oh, there she is.
hello,
She brought me in
Kimberly.
like ghostly too.
Right, my supernatural power. Right? Okay. So, Kim, I think I said something I want to be sure I'm accurate. You know, you have requested a bunch of emails prior to the 2020 election, correct?
Yes.
Does Maricopa County
All the way back to
claim
216.
did the Maricopa County claim they're all gone?
Yes, they said they only go back to 2020.
Yeah, they're all gone. Yeah, can't
Mhm.
get that stuff. Don't worry about it.
Convenient leading up to
Yeah.
2020. We won't know.
Right, very, 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 very convenient. Right. But
Well,
anyway.
and they're doing quite a bit of other things with public records, and it's quite interesting because we have in Maricopa County, we have 3 new board of supervisors and a new county recorder. And you would think that transparency would be on the top of the list, especially when you look at what they campaigned on when they got elected. Yet transparency seems to be diminishing.
Going
It's
backwards.
really difficult to admit that it's harder now to get public records than it was prior to the 2024 election. And we've experienced all varieties and spectrums of denials, price gouging. These records don't exist. So we're working on that, and we're going to go into more detail on that.
Well, not only that, but I mean, you've done PRRs that say, I want every email between person X and person Y, right? And they deny you. They say, you gotta give us some keyword. Right? Now, my advice to you
Yep.
is tell them the keywords are person X and person Y. Right?
Exactly.
How's that
That's what I
sound?
have
We
told
want
them.
every one of these damn emails between these two people. Those are the keywords.
Mhm.
That's it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love
And it's
in
easier
this
for them-
response-
Well,
Go
it's
ahead,
easier
Kimberly.
for them to give me everything than it is for me to give them a topic and then have to search for a topic. Just give me everything and I'll search the topics.
Yeah. Well, they just don't like us. Because we
They
do stuff
definitely
like
don't
this.
like me.
Right? No, because we do stuff like this. We break stories to the people of the state of Arizona and the United States, because this is happening in every swing state and in a lot of other swing counties throughout the United States. Maricopa County is not alone. I think Maricopa County is the most corrupt of the states, and I think a lot of that was because, you know, John McCain, and he institutionalized the national security state in the state of Arizona. I think that's entirely the problem. But back to deleted database, right? And so
Right.
I want to clarify. The Arizona Senate served a subpoena on the Maricopa County, and that subpoena requested what was known as the EMS server, and that stands for Election Management System, correct?
That's correct.
From the Board of Supervisors, and all data contained therein. Isn't that correct?
That's
All
correct.
right. All right. So do you have anything to add? Anybody have anything to add before we cue up our first video?
No, I think the video is going to kind of speak for itself.
Yeah.
So this first video that you're going to watch is we're going to go backwards in this process. This is actually Congressman Andy Biggs at a congressional hearing interviewing Jack Sellers, and I believe it was who's the other one that was in that? It
Bill
was Jack
Gates, wasn't
Sellers. Who? Bill Gates. Yes.
Bill Gates,
Thank you,
wasn't it?
Kimberly. Yeah, it was Bill Gates and Jack Sellers. So, Steve, can you go ahead and cue up this deletion compilation video?
Ninjas can't even find files that were already given to them by Maricopa County. They can't find the files because they don't know what they're doing. And we wouldn't be asked to do this on-the-job training if qualified auditors had been hired to do this work.
I have been accused of deleting entire databases, though I participated in the transference of all databases to the Senate, have seen them with my own eyes, and even though I still have access to the current fully functional voting database.
Is it standard practice to delete files off a server after an election?
I would say that it is appropriate to maintain files, and that's exactly what we did. We deleted the deleted files have been discussed. They were archived.
So you admit that you guys did delete, Maricopa County did delete files off the server after the election?
That are archived.
They didn't have access to those archived files at first. Is that fair to say?
They did not subpoena those. That's correct.
Okay, so you didn't feel obligated to turn that over then to them?
We responded to the subpoena.
Mr. Bennett, your response to that?
I find it frankly laughable to suggest that a county, in response to a subpoena, could say we will delete files from the hard drives and materials that we give to the auditors because we have those files archived on data that we did not give to the auditors when the subpoena said turn over all the records related to the election.
So your Twitter account mentions that the purging of the 2020 election database in the beginning of February is a standard practice. Can you please confirm for me that that's what you do for all elections? After all elections, that you do that?
I cannot confirm that for you today, but we can certainly get you that answer, Congressman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you confirm that today or not?
I really can't confirm that either today. I just know that because there is limited space on these servers, when you have to run another election, then you have to make room for the additional election data.
Can you explain to me why data was still present for prior elections on the databases in and of itself?
Yeah, again, I don't have an answer to that question, but we'll certainly get you an answer for it, Congressman.
I would appreciate if you would give me that information.
And I do think that it's important that our recorder has suggested that he will be answering every question in a timely fashion.
That's the same recorder that campaigned that Adrian Fontes was incompetent and called him a criminal. And he was the guy that was running the 2020 election, and you actually hired someone to oversee Mr. Fontes because you guys didn't trust Mr. Fontes as well. Is that the same guy? Is that the same Stephen Richard?
Yeah, I wouldn't put it that way.
I thought that was just funny. I never get tired of watching Jack Sellers.
Let me ask you a direct question.
Where's my lawyer? Where's my lawyer?
He had a Biden moment, didn't he?
Yeah.
He looked like he was lost in the rose garden.
Funny. That was a hoot. That's just like, typical politicians, right? And so here we had the EMS server. They have their board of supervisors meeting where they just vilified us. But not just them. Their friends in the news media, right? Vilified those of us doing the audit because, they were saying we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know what was going on. You remember that?
Oh my goodness, absolutely. And that was the thing. It was
Right.
we were met with so much
Scorn,
yes,
hostility, hatred.
just outright disdain for the American people and for the voters in Maricopa County.
Yeah, it was a sad day in Arizona's history. But they have that meeting and then they're called to testify before Congress under oath.
Well,
Correct?
some things happened in between. So they had this meeting at Maricopa County, the Board of Supervisors bi-monthly meeting. And they said, we didn't delete this. Cyber Ninjas doesn't know what they're talking about. These people are crazy. These aren't file deletions, right? And so Ben Cotton had found the deletion logs and they got leaked publicly. And so the Board of Supervisors scrambled with PR and they started pushing out all these things. This is a lie. These are incompetent people. And Steve, can you put up number 2, please, for us? So what he's going to put up is the actual deletion log that Ben Cotton found. And if you look to the right, you'll see all the red X's that show that these files were deleted. And all of them show a modification or deletion date of 4/12/2021.
Now, we should write that number down. 4/12/2021.
Right.
Do we have a time?
Yeah, it was approximately, I believe, 3:04 p.m.
Okay.
on 4/21.
Okay, so the date is highly relevant, correct?
Absolutely.
And the time is highly relevant, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And so they go around vilifying those of us doing the audit as being incompetent, unable to get the job done. They don't want to take the time to teach us. But then when they're called on the carpet in front of Congress.
Right. Well, we got video.
Oh,
yeah.
that's yeah. So let's talk a little bit about. Well, we want to play a Ben Cotton video, don't we?
Yeah. So this has been Cotton testifying before Senator Fan and Senator Peterson.
Right.
And he's talking about the file deletion and what occurred with that file deletion.
Right. And Ben Cotton is by the way, one of the foremost computer forensics analysts in the United States. Isn't that correct?
That's absolutely true. He's got a reputation that surpasses very few in the country.
Right.
And they tried to discredit him and discredit his credentials when he came forward with this deletion. So it was interesting when this law got leaked because we were able to not only find the video, but we the people, we PRR'd, we public records requested the server log itself to show the access key card swipes and correlate it with the video.
And this is why I'm going to reiterate again real quick. I'm going to do a commercial advertisement, right? This is a commercial advertisement. If you love your country and if you're out there, regardless of what city, state, county you live in, it doesn't matter. You need to study your public records laws in whatever state you happen to be in, and you need to start requesting documents from your government because they're obligated, I guarantee you, under most states' laws to provide them to you so that you can find out exactly what your government is doing. And that's what most of the information our work is based on, isn't it?
I would say at least 99% of our work is based off of some public records document.
Yeah.
And then we supplement it with public source and experts. But you have to have the government data and the government documents first. So it is critically important. And if there are people out there that want to learn how to do this, please reach out to us. We are happy to help walk you through the process, because the more of us that are holding our government accountable, the better. And we've seen through this course of time putting this information out and the impact it truly does have in making things safer, secure, and more transparent. But I think we should go to Ben Cotton's video. What are your thoughts, Brian?
Well, I think so.
All right, let's
Why
do
not?
it. Steve, can you cue up number 3, Ben Cotton's video? So this is Ben Cotton testifying to Senate President Fan and Senator Peterson about the audit findings.
In a RAID configuration known as 1+0. So in other words, you have a volume that is not only mirrored, but it's also data redundancy inscribed across both drives as well. Obviously, if I don't turn on a system, I don't have access to the RAID parameters, and the county did not provide those to us. So I had to do a discovery process to determine what that RAID configuration was. Part of that process is a scan across those drives to detect partitions of data and to also detect what we call a master file table. So a master file table, very simply put, is a record of all of the directories and the files that are contained in that partition, and a pointing and a pointer to where that data resides on the hard drive. In the course of performing that MFT discovery, I discovered a MFT that clearly indicated that the database directory was deleted from that server. So all of this, however, may be a moot point, because subsequently I've been able to recover all of those deleted files, and I have access to that data.
Okay.
So here we are. We've got Ben Cotton saying, I found this file directory. It's deleted. And you've got the county saying, no, none of this is true. This isn't real. We didn't delete anything.
And Ben Cotton was then subsequently able to reconstruct all of that data, correct?
Absolutely, because those people that have a little bit of knowledge in computers, you know that once things are out there, they're typically, you don't get rid of them very easy. I think that's why Hillary Clinton put bleach on her servers, right?
She used bleach bit. Bleach bit. Yeah, bleach bit and whitewash.
So
the servers
Kimberly,
completely.
what do you remember about the whole file deletion thing? What stood out the most to you when we were living this together back in 21?
Oh, when they deleted the file, it was immediately guilty. That was my thought. Now, why would you delete it the night before the audit, knowing we were going to look at it, and then still leave all the older elections on?
You said
wasn't it the
night before the audit?
Yeah, wasn't it the night before they deleted that file? The night before the audit.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
the night before.
Okay, so just so people have an understanding of what transpired, right? Because you said something that's very key. The Senate served a subpoena. The Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, vis-a-vis their lawyers at the Maricopa County Attorney's Office, challenged that subpoena in a court of law, correct? Yeah?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
And the judge
They
ruled
said
that
everything.
the subpoena was valid. Okay. So the court rules the subpoena is valid. Maricopa County then has to turn over all the documents. But before it does, before it complies with that validly issued subpoena, they delete files from the election management system. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, yeah. That's what I said.
Yeah.
It was one day before the U-Haul trucks and the Penske trucks loaded up all of the all of the documents and the servers at Maricopa County and hauled them over. So this occurred while they were processing for these subpoenas.
Right.
It's funny because their narrative is we were preparing for another election, but as Andy Biggs had pointed out, the election, all of the election files for 2018 and 2016 were still there.
Right.
They didn't archive the oldest election. They chose to archive the one election that was under subpoena to be audited the day before it was transferred. And so this whole gaslighting narrative
Right.
that the county has created, it's pathetic.
Yeah.
It's really
Well, and
bad.
they were 100% supported by mainstream media in Maricopa County, right? Arizona Central, they were all pushing the exact same narrative. In fact, they were actually releasing, weren't they? What's that called? Where you release the personal information of individuals working?
They
there?
were doxing the
doxing.
managers at the audit.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah. But anyway, okay. So let's get back to the server logs. We have the server logs, right? Hey, Steve, we want to look at number 5, the server log.
No, number 4, public record server logs.
Oh.
Let's take a look at 4.
My bad. Good
Yeah.
call, Steve.
Okay, so after we got the deletion records, which we've shown you, showing it was 4/12/2021, and the file deletions occurred at 3:38 p.m., public records requested the key card access for the server room where those were contained. And if you look at this log, you'll see on 4/12/2021 at 12:34, Brian Ramirez, who was their IT specialist, attempted to badge into the room, and he was denied. He was
Now-
denied because he didn't have access.
Okay, so let's talk about this server room, right? This server room is exceptionally important, is it not? It's like in a big glass box in the middle of the room. Now, why is it in a glass box?
So everybody can see it.
All right.
It's important. It's a transparency issue. They put it in a glass
Uh-huh.
box, but it's secure from access, and it has a computer badge in, badge out door,
Right.
so it can log everybody that goes in
Right.
and out.
Right.
But everyone can see it.
Right.
That is the key.
But this is like, what was that spy movie where Tom Cruise, who I don't really like, he dangles down through the ventilation shaft and he's hanging above the floor, right? This is all high tech and very, very secure. Chris knows what movie I'm talking about. All high tech and very, very protected stuff. This is your democracy, Arizona, right? Maricopa County is 60% of the state of Arizona's election. That is a significant share. You, as Stephen Richer said, right? Well, what do he say? Kim, you remember the quote I'm talking about? Stephen Richer? Well, I decided to run because, Maricopa County is 60% of the state, and if you can win Maricopa County, you got a better chance statewide. Right? You remember that?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Stephen
he
Richer.
said that you can get a better chance in elections. So it's
Right.
basically
Right.
Maricopa was his foot in the door.
Yeah, his foot in the door. And so basically this is Maricopa County. This is much of Arizona, the nuts and bolts of the elections, the most important thing, the election management system. And I don't want to harp on this, but this is hugely important system.
Well, why don't we look at this system? We've got some video of that. Steve, can you put up number 5 video? And this doesn't have any audio. This is actually Nest camera footage from the recorder's office itself that's showing this process when they went into that server room and deleted files. And what the server log showed us is at the time of key entry, it shows an election worker by the name of Christy Passarelli badging in, but She lets two other employees
Well,
into
we
the
can-
server room and walks away.
We can talk about this video while it's playing, right?
Absolutely. You
All
want to
right.
go ahead and put that video up, Steve?
Now remember that important date, April 12th, 2021. That's the date of the deletion.
Now, if you look up in the top left-hand corner, this is the FPS date and timestamp from the Nest cams. And that glass box that Brian talked about is that room that we're zeroing in here. And you can see the lady with her badge access card. She scans the door to unlock it, and she lets the man in the orange-brown shirt and the lady in the black shirt into the server room and walks away.
Now,
So she's the only one authorized with a badge to get in there, and she lets them in and then walks away.
right, is she anywhere near that server room?
No.
No, and so they're not supposed to do that, are they?
No, if you listen to Charles is their number one kind of IT manager at the time. He actually testifies and puts out a statement with the Board of Supervisors stating that no single person should ever be allowed in the server room unattended, which happens multiple times
Right.
throughout the months leading up to this. It also states that only 4 employees in the entire elections department have credentials to access that server room.
Right.
And they're the only ones authorized to be in there unless a person is accompanied by an authorized employee.
Right. And now neither one of the individuals in that server room at this time have access, do they?
No, they do not.
Okay. So technically, pursuant to Maricopa County's rules, Chrissy Passarelli should be in that room with them. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. And if you notice what he's doing there, for those that may not know, is he is actually accessing the EMS system. So the area that he's facing in that screen that's kind of white looking, that's a laptop style computer. So he's got a keyboard that he's keystroking on, and that is the actual election management system that the KPU that he is accessing at the moment.
And that's all the data, all the ballots, everything related to the 2020 election, correct?
That's absolutely correct. And it's not just the 2020 election. It holds and houses all of the historic data as well. And as Congressman Biggs had eloquently pointed out, the only ones missing was 2020. Now, I'm leaving this up because I want you to see something here. So, again, Christy Passarelli is not there. They open the door for this man here to go in, also not authorized in the server room. She goes out for a minute, and he lets this other man in. And all of this is happening at the time of the file deletion. So remember, the deletion logs are 3:37-ish in the afternoon, and this is 3:39. And he walks around to the other side, and he's within that server room as well. This is what they call in the industry tailgating, right? So it's like when you go to a condominium that's gated, and then you wait
Right.
and you kind of linger for somebody who lives there to go in, and then you follow them through the gate. That's what they're doing here. This is tailgating, which is this is a violation of CISA, CIS, any kind of cybersecurity standards that you can imagine. They're doing it. And you can go ahead and fade that video out, Steve.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. And so what was that? What was really the aftermath? What was Stephen Richards' response?
There was none. There was no repercussion. There was no fallback. They gaslit. They claimed that they had just simply copied the files over and archived them. And we sent all this information. We sent the videos. We sent the server logs, along with many other things, to the Attorney General to be investigated. And nothing was really done. And Christy Passarelli, who was the assistant elections director at the time, she ended up leaving and going to work for elections in the city of Surprise.
Right. Yeah, she's a recorder for Surprise, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so just sort of we did that backwards. So just a real quick oral run through going later in time and to further it to the future. So what we have is people press the Senate to do an audit, right? And then the state Senate decides, okay, we're going to subpoena all these documents so that they can have an audit. They subpoena the documents. They fight about it in court. The Senate wins. Maricopa County has to turn over the records. They then, on the eve of turning over the EMS system, delete the 2020 database. They then, when they're caught having deleted the database, they then gaslight the public and attack the auditors, correct?
Absolutely. Incompetent conspiracy theorists, liars.
Right. And then the logs come out and the video comes out showing Chrissy Passarelli allowing these unauthorized people access at the time of the deletion, correct?
That's correct.
And then Congressman Andy Biggs has congressional hearings where he puts Jack Sellers and Bill Gates under oath, correct?
Yes.
And both Bill Gates and Jack Sellers, it was Bill Gates who said the word deletion, right? And,
Yeah, twice.
Right, twice. And then he says, well, yeah, but we archived them, right? Which means you just move them to another system
Right.
to store them when you take them off the relevant system, right? And so they were basically forced to admit that they did, in fact, delete the databases from the EMS server before giving it to audit. Right?
And that's correct. And even if you were to audit it and stick it someplace else, it's like if somebody, goes into their bank account and they delete all of the transactions, but they still have copied of the canceled checks hid somewhere in a safe.
Right.
And don't give it to the IRS. How is that okay? How is that legitimate? Right.
Yeah, that's an issue. And so, but when I was asking you about the ramification, they got caught with their pants down, and then Stephen Richer really had a response, didn't he? And what was Stephen Richer's response?
To the file deletion?
Yeah.
He lied. He straight up said, I'm being accused of deleting files and I've turned everything over and it's not my fault that these people are incompetent and don't know what they're looking at.
Well, now he might not have deleted, right?
Well, it was he didn't. Brian Ramirez deleted them.
Right.
But under whose direction and order?
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to find out. Under whose direction and order was that database deleted? But Stephen Richer's response was very aggressive, and it was very anti-MAGA, and it was very anti-Trump, as Stephen Richer started waging war on us, did he not?
Oh, absolutely.
100%. He started waging war, and that war focused on we are a bunch of violent extremists, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's actually something that played out in court. We had put in a public records request, as you know, Brian, and we had requested the names of the employees who conducted signature verification.
Right.
Because we were in the midst of doing the signature verification audit, we found out that people were doing signature verification remotely from home. We found out that there were files being done at rates that appeared to be mechanical in nature. So we had no way to confirm that they were human.
Right.
So we requested the user numbers that were provided to us in the timing data were associated with a living, breathing human being, and we wanted those names. So we actually ended up having to sue and go to trial over this. And Stephen Richer stated that it was in the best interest of the state not to disclose this information to we the people because they didn't want these election workers to be persecuted for simply working the election. And it's interesting to me that they picked, of all, their key witness was Christy Passarelli,
Yeah.
the assistant election director who violated multiple statutes by allowing people to utilize. We have her on video actually giving her access card to employees in the election department to allow them to use it to access unauthorized areas. So this woman who consistently violates the law, who is one of the main people responsible for our election failure, they prop her up as their token victim,
Right.
and why they cannot allow organizations like ours to verify a human being
Right.
that's paid for by our tax dollars.
Well, they made a big deal about election violence, did they? Now, Stephen Richer's wife is an assistant U.S. attorney for the District of Arizona, correct?
Correct, and I think her primary job is prosecuting election-related violent crimes.
Right. How many cases are you aware of that she's prosecuted?
I'm actually not aware. There's two people that I know of that were prosecuted for election violence.
Right.
And neither of them lived in the state of Arizona.
Yeah. But that was his stick, wasn't it? And
Yes.
as a matter of fact, Adrian Fontes, the man who's too coward to run against his party, he used the violence tactic in that lawsuit to get the names of the voters who did not have proof of citizenship, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And in fact, I believe they even brought an expert out from the University of Chicago, didn't they, to testify about how, MAGA, violence, we're extremists, right? Yeah, and so, it's really gone nowhere, and I'm hoping that people start to realize that Stephen Richer's a bigger failure than we actually make him out to be, right? Because he's done nothing but gaslight, attempt to destroy reputations in an effort to conceal relevant election-related records from the people of the state of Arizona, right?
In addition, spending literally millions of dollars erecting fences and hiring personal security guards. Like, seriously, where is the credible threat that our tax dollars should be paying for private personal security for Adrian Fontes? Why don't he just call some of his cartel buddies that he used to represent and have them do security? Why should our tax dollars have to foot the bill?
Well, and not only that, but if you go downtown during election time and you look at MC Tech, it looks like South Korean demilitarized zone, doesn't it?
Yes.
It's pretty sad that we're supposed to be a country where people govern themselves, but the people are not allowed to even see into how we choose those who govern. And that's a big problem, isn't it?
Absolutely. And, let's think about why they erected that fence, Brian.
Yeah.
After the 2020 election, there was a group of us. Congressman Gozar was one of them. And I believe it was Senator Kelly Townsend. She was State Senator Kelly Townsend, and Steve and myself and a whole group of us went down to Maricopa County Tabulation Center to simply tell them, count all of the votes. Don't stop counting. We want every vote to count. And I remember the moment that we were actually, as a large group out there protesting the county elections department, saying this election is being stolen. And we got down on our knees to actually pray. And CNN was reporting, well, we don't know what they're doing on their knees. We have no idea. it looks like maybe they're preparing to storm the elections department. And they're
Right.
chanting loudly, let us in, let us
Right.
in, which none of that happened. We were chanting, let him in, because we wanted Congressman Gozo to go in. Within 3 to 4 days, they had temporary fencing.
Right.
And by the end of the 2020 election, when everything had somewhat settled down, they built all of this permanent fencing. So it was a direct result of the American people, the Maricopa County citizens, trying to hold them accountable.
Right.
So those fences are not there for safety. Those fences are there to prevent peaceful citizens
Right.
from having the ability to hold their elected officials accountable. You can't even get in that gate without an appointment. And you have to hit the buzzer speaker and you have to beg to go in. And they won't let you in most times without an appointment. And I'm sure if I showed up there, they would find 500 reasons to not let me through that gate.
Well, it's funny because Stephen Richer claimed to be so transparent, right? Oh, transparency! Come down and take a tour, right? Well, how about all the after the fact of election documents and data? That's the stuff he doesn't want anybody to see. More than happy to have you come down and look at a sterile election department. But when it comes time to look at what actually happened, Stephen Richer says, sit down and shut up, right? You don't need to know. You just trust your election expert.
Absolutely. So,
Speaking
Kimberly.
about that gate, well, I was just going to say, speaking about that gate, on February 1st in his calendar is a meeting with CISA to go over a grant. And
Do we have that excerpt here that we can show?
No,
Or no?
I didn't.
Okay, go ahead and tell everybody about that.
Okay, so it's on February 1st. Oh, well, it's Homeland Security Grant Combo. That's what it's called. And it's just with the MCRC or the MCRO people. And there's no CISA people or DHS people listed on the meeting. But I'm assuming that meeting is where he got the money for the gate. And that was the grant. And
Is that combo? Does that come with large fries and a drink?
well, it says convo, like conversation. But maybe he did ask for fries. No, he got it with Coke. Remember that. That's his drink of choice. But he was in an interview not like last week, the week before,
Like
a couple
one where he's
days
wearing his
before our
beanie
last
hat?
show. Yes. And he was he was so dejected. You could tell
Yeah.
he was dejected in that conversation. He was just down, but he says
He should have
his
felt
proudest
better. He was
moment was being
wearing a
able to-
beanie hat to cover that
Yes.
thing he has going on
Right.
top of his head.
Yes, he was wearing a beanie hat, and he wasn't as, I would say, fake. Maybe that's the real him. I don't know, but he sounded dejected. But he said one of his proudest moments was getting that gate, that fence around. The one place we're supposed to be able to have transparency and build trust, and he puts a gate around it.
Right.
So I just thought that was interesting.
So you've been
Nothing
doing
spells trust like you can't see inside.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And that's what they've done with everything is reduce transparency. And Kimberly, you've been doing a lot of public records requests surrounding Stephen Richer's calendar and these meetings that he's been having.
We're going to get to some meat and potato. More meat and potato.
So when we talk about transparency, you reported to us something that I believe is quite startling, and I think people need to know, and that is the use of personal emails by elected and government employees in order to kind of skirt the public records process. Do you want to talk a little bit about when you first started discovering that and under what circumstances? And then I'll show a little snapshot of kind of what some of these emails look like. But go ahead and tell them what you were finding.
Well, in parsing the data, because we talked about States United before, and I pulled out all the states that were involved and everything, but I really didn't focus on the non-governmental, because you just never know if it's somebody that's in an organization, a private citizen, what's going on when it's, States United and all these volunteer organizations, right? So as I continued to look through the data, I noticed a work-related email by Richard's wife using her Gmail.
Okay, now,
So I
just to point out again, Stephen Richer, his wife, is an assistant United States attorney for the District of Arizona, and she is responsible for election-related cases that arise in the District of Arizona. Continue.
So we have the U.S. District Attorney listed using her personal email communicating with the Elections Department.
Well, I don't know that she was communicating. I just know that the calendar was set up using her personal email. And
Okay,
the
so
meeting.
anybody, let me ask you a question. Anybody seeing that calendar entry would see that personal email address, right?
Mm-hmm.
We
Yeah.
can see it, right?
Right.
And so is now let me ask you a question. Why would you put a personal email address instead of your Department of Justice email address?
That's a really good question, because the meeting doesn't appear to apply to anything that is prosecuting a case, some kind of election crime.
Right.
But it has to do
I
with
don't know
elections.
if we want to bring it up, huh?
No, this is a surprise we're saving for our viewers.
Later,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, this is
Right.
going to be I think we talked about a couple weeks down the road, but we got something we're going to talk about that's very interesting. But I think right now we just want to focus on the fact that these government officials are using personal email addresses, and anybody they're working with in this calendar or this training then has access to their personal email address, right?
Right.
Right.
Do we have any other important people that are?
Oh yeah, I think the people in Colorado would be interested to know that Jenna Griswold is doing democracy work with her personal Gmail account.
Right.
So yeah, and that's with the States United
Right.
group that they have in her Secretary of State capacity.
Who else? Throw some names out.
Well, there's a guy by the name of Neil Kelly. Now, the funny thing about that one is it appears to be it is his wife. I found her on deed to their house. So it is his wife's Gmail account that is operating with States United. Now, the interesting thing about Neil Kelly is that he's California's registrar from 2005 to 2022. Now, my guess is a registrar in California is like a Richer or a Fontes, Secretary of State or a recorder in California. So
Right.
he
The
was that
registrar
until.
is our equivalent of a county recorder.
Okay. So he's that in California during this time frame. And he's now with what's it called? Safe and Secure Elections. He's the chair emeritus. Is that how you
Right.
pronounce it?
Yeah.
Emeritus. Okay. And
Emeritus.
yeah, he's now with them. But here, I want to read you
Well, hold on.
a few
That's a
Oh,
non-governmental organization, isn't it?
oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
definitely. But
So what you're saying, Kimberly, is he was using his wife's email address to communicate regarding elections while he was a California registrar elected representative.
yes, and so was
Yeah.
Jenna Griswold in the
Oh,
same States United, and they called it bi-monthly meeting. So it's not like something that only happened once. They
right.
were having regular meetings. This is the Norm
And
Eisen group.
these are meetings being held by States United, a very
Hmm.
vocal and anti-Trump, anti-MAGA organization, right? Their
Yes.
goal is to send every member of MAGA to a prison.
Hmm.
Would you that's a fair
Oh
assessment?
yeah. Oh
Okay.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, pardon me, they're deeply involved with Stephen Richer in our elections,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
all of these other people, including Stephen Richer's U.S. attorney wife.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So now, Kimberly,
And
you submitted a public records request for We the People requesting correspondence by Lindy Short from her personal email. Is that correct? You want to talk a little bit about that?
which email?
Lindsay Short's personal emails. You submitted a
Oh.
public records request for We the People to the United States Attorney, District Attorney's Office, requesting that those personal emails become public because she has used a personal email to conduct business in her official capacity. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, I did. And their response was that they were it had to be an exception. It was assigned to the complex track.
Complex.
And
Oh,
my
how
guess is
complex.
yeah, my guess is that there's probably a lot of fluttering going on over there and questioning because of
Right.
what she was
Yeah. All
doing.
right. We want to know who she was emailing, what she was emailing them about, and we want to know, right? And so,
Hmm.
you know,
So should we?
And
Do you want to go ahead and show that response, Kimberly? Do you want me to put that up on the board here?
yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So Steve, can you put up number 11 for Kimberly? And Kimberly, once it gets set up and we get your audio feed going, why don't you talk a little bit about the PRR and the response you received? So just give this a second to go up. Okay. So it looks like you sent this to the United States Attorney's Office for the District of Arizona. Do you want to talk about this, Kimberly, and what was kind of key in this request?
Yeah, I gave them all her personal email addresses and asked for all communications between her and Stephen Richer, not only from her work address, but from her those private email addresses. And I told them what she was doing with that private email address, and
mhm.
I asked for an expedited response. So just to go over their response, I first want to say um, the it's actually a FOIA, not a PRR, but the FOIA person that responded to me was very gracious, very nice, not at all like
Like
the
Maricopa
county
County.
has become a little short with me, but
Uh,
yeah, but they're very, very gracious and very kind. But as you can see, as I highlighted, that because I told them why I wanted the information and why I wanted it expedited. Um, and they said, well, this is unusual circumstances.
Yeah,
And
it is unusual circumstances because,
it is.
yeah,
And they said that they were going to assign it to the complex track.
right.
And they said because it's they may have to look at different offices and areas, and that my guess is it's canned wording for, oh my god, we're going to have to figure out what happened.
Right. I love this.
Yeah.
It potentially involves voluminous records and or requires
Yeah.
consultation with another agency with a
Yeah.
substantial interest in the subject matter and therefore falls within unusual circumstances.
Yeah, we call this the
Yeah.
oh shit track.
Right? That's
Yeah.
the oh shit email.
Yeah.
Right.
I think so.
Yeah.
And actually I
Yeah.
thought, okay, I know that Richard is not some deep state spy or something, because he would have never let this be in his calendar. At the possibility of it even being PRR'd or any of that, I don't think he thought anybody would ever ask for it.
Well,
And
nobody's
so,
accused Stephen Richer of being incredibly bright. We can call him a lot of things, but bright is not necessarily.
opportunist, I guess. I don't know. That's what I would
You want to
think.
go ahead and take
But
it down?
the interesting thing about this is when you do a PRR or a FOIA, having expedited return isn't is usually they'll say no, you know, it's doesn't meet any of the criteria or whatever. And in fact, I met all three. They have three criteria in order. It has to meet one of these. I met all three, and I said, this is why it meets this and this and this. And anybody that wants to do a FOIA, you just go on their site and they tell you exactly how to do it. And if you want to expedite it, it has to meet. They have everything spelled out for you. So
Right.
anyway, they said, yep, you get expedited. So we'll see what
Huh.
expedited really is. So we'll wait and see what that trove of information comes. But
Well, I mean,
the
if anything,
emails,
I mean, the problem with them using personal Gmail account is,
right?
do you mind if I intervene and give a little explanation real quick?
No. Go
Hey,
ahead.
Steve, can we have the whiteboard?
Ooh, a traveling mic now. You guys are getting all high tech.
They're testing audio right now.
Hello? Ah, cool. All right. So, real quick, little educational video, right? Under the United States Code, that's what USC means, U.S. Code, we have 44 USC Section 3101 et sec. And that means all the statutes that follows, right? This is the requirement that they maintain public records, right? That the federal government employees maintain records of their public activities. The state of Arizona, 39 Arizona Revised Statute, Section 101 et sec. That means that Arizona government officials are obligated to maintain all of their records, right? Let's say you have a government server. Doesn't matter if you're state or federal. And that's where your email lies, right? And so you send an email to somebody. Basically, what happens, that server catches that and it automatically saves it. If you are over here on Gmail, a private email server, it never gets captured by this system. It doesn't get captured by this system. This person can hit delete, empty trash, and it's out of their system. And that's part of the problem, folks. When our government agents, not only that, right, but the U.S. attorney for the District of Arizona is the highest ranking law enforcement agent in the state of Arizona, at least under federal law, right? And so when these people are not doing business through their government email, then there's no accountability, is there?
So Brian,
No.
isn't there some kind of provision or case law that states that if you're an elected official or a government agent, such as in this case when you're a U.S. attorney,
No.
using your personal email, then subjects that personal email to inspection
And that's
of
why
public records?
that's why we sent a preservation of records letter to the acting U.S. attorney for the District of Arizona.
So, Steve, can you put that up, please, so Brian can explain what this means? It's going to be number 12.
All right, and so basically, this is a letter. Sorry,
A
lost
letter
my-
of preservation.
a letter of preservation that we drafted and sent to the acting United States attorney for the District of Arizona, because Trump hasn't replaced the former U.S. attorney. He's only got an acting in place right now. And simply what we have asked him is, referring to Arizona law, 44 U.S.C. section 3101, that he preserve all of Miss Short's Gmail emails so that they can be discovered pursuant to the Freedom of Information Act, which is 5 U.S.C. section 552. And so we are hoping that the acting U.S. attorney will actually work with Miss Short to go back in time and get all of her Gmails so that, under the federal law, the Freedom of Information Act, the government can withhold records if an exception applies, right? Maybe there's an exception. Maybe most of her emails are personal. Hi, honey, do you want to have lunch? Something along those lines. That'd be a personal email that we don't want, right? But to apply carte blanche, the exception to all emails would be improper, because I doubt they all deal with you want to have lunch, that they don't all deal with personal information. And so we want the opportunity to litigate those issues in court so that we can get access to Ms. Short's Gmail email.
And what would something like that typically look like, would you think? Would they appoint like a special counsel to sit down and go through her emails and cipher them? Would they use keyword searches? What do you anticipate this is going to look like? Because I imagine this is why Kimberly received the oh shit letter,
Right.
because they're probably trying to figure this out as they go, right?
Well, what they do in Arizona, here's what they do in the state of Arizona. Under Arizona law, the Arizona Supreme Court has stated it would be proper for the judge in the trial matter to review the emails and to make a determination with respect to each email, right? And so, we have a records case right now against Rachel Mitchell for all of their communications with the Center for Internet Security, right? Center for Internet Security has direct access to the, Supreme Court and the Arizona judiciary, and we now know that they have direct access to Maricopa County Attorney's Office. So we want to know what they're talking about with the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. And so the Supreme Court in case law has said it would be proper for the judge to review the emails and make an individual determination when the government deems an exception.
So that the letter that was sent is essentially putting the department on notice
Yes.
to let Ms. Short know, don't delete your emails.
Right.
You need to preserve everything until this can be worked out either through the department or through the courts or whatever's necessary.
Well, and the problem is this, like I said, you send your email, you get your response, you hit delete, you hit empty trash. No longer on your system, right? I was talking to somebody in the know earlier today before the show about Gmail, and they told me, well, they probably exist somewhere on Gmail server, even though you delete them and empty your trash, because Gmail has absolutely no incentive to get rid of your personal email, right?
Right.
I was doing a state bar CLE, and they were talking up CISA, but at the same time, they were talking down Google, saying, "Oh yeah, it will mine the hell out of your data." And so my guess is all of her Gmails still exist out there somewhere, whether on her system or not.
So this is going to be quite interesting, right, Kimberly? And you've got some other interesting things that you've come across or found in regards to States United and these public records. Is there anything else you want to share before we call it a night?
Yeah, that States United um, meeting, there was 168 people that have their that are using a non-governmental email
Do
address.
we have a
A
copy of
few
that?
of them. Do you have a copy of that? We do, but we did not make a slide out of it because we didn't get it redacted
Oh,
in
okay.
time.
Well,
So
continue.
there are some there are a couple private organizations, or like not private but nonprofits, or democracy groups, extensions on there. And I haven't had time to look at every single one of those, but I have found quite a few um, government employees on there, and I want to just double check, be 100% sure that they are who I think they are before I put out any word on it.
Okay. Now, there's an email that I'm really, really concerned about, and I sort of alluded to earlier, with a significant conflict of interest, right? And it ends
Mm-hmm.
in katiehobbs.org. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right.
Yes. When
Steve, can
she,
you? Yeah.
I was going to say, katiehobbs.org she's also one that's on that States United email.
Yeah.
Right now, was she an elected representative at the time of this?
Yes. She was
She was.
Secretary of
What date was
State.
that? Secretary of State.
So here,
It
let's
was,
set up the scenario here. Katie Hobbs, Secretary of State, running the statewide election apparatus, right? We
mhm.
know now people on her katiehobbs.org staff are working with Stephen Richer and State United at the Maricopa County level, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Hey, Steve, can we pull up that website, katiehobbs.org? Katie Hobbs, Governor Katie Hobbs. Right. Donate. Is this okay? Is this her governor page? Because is she asking people to donate to cover all those lost funds?
No, these are for her campaign,
Okay.
Brian.
So this is her campaign page. Yeah, scroll down to the bottom. All right. Paid for by elect Katie Hobbs. Authorized by
Mhm.
Katie Hobbs. Okay, so Katie Hobbs, what you're telling us, Kim, is people on the Katie Hobbs campaign are actually working in conjunction with Stephen Richer, States United, and these other anti-Trump, anti-Carrie Lake, anti-MAGA election organizations. Is that correct?
Well, I was assuming it was just Katie Hobbs because it says Katie Hobbs on it, but you're right. Who knows who's behind that email address? And
Right.
it
And
was 11/2021 is the date
Yeah.
of the email.
Yeah. So this is all the run up to the 2022 election, isn't it? That they're
Mm-hmm.
doing all of these
Exactly.
meetings. So did you find any other campaigns that were invited to attend these States United meetings with Stephen Richards elections?
I can't. Well, I can't think of anything right now. But I know that who. Let me look and see what his name is.
So it
Who's the
does
guy that
appear that
Shapiro?
Katie Hobbs was on those emails in her official capacity as Secretary of State,
Yes.
representing her campaign.
Well,
Representative
I
her
was
campaign.
assuming it was to avoid the Secretary of State capture, and that's why she was using her campaign email. But you have to remember, this States United meeting was all elected officials. It was all Secretary of States. A couple of states had their DOJs on there.
Okay, now
And there
could you
was,
name one single conservative elected official?
I,
Okay, we're talking about states like California. We're talking about states like
well, Stephen
Washington,
Richer.
Colorado.
He doesn't
Okay, I said
count.
conservative.
Bill Gates is on there too.
I said
He's not
conservative.
There isn't any. There isn't
Right,
any. They were
right.
all
So
left wing
yeah, so
people.
this is a consortium of anti-Trump, anti-MAGA, left-wing people running the
Hmm.
2022 election in conjunction with Katie Hobbs's campaign.
Hmm.
All right.
Yep.
I mean, if this doesn't bother anybody, does this bother you?
Tremendously.
Hey, Steve, does this bother you?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's very
Okay.
concerning.
All right. Well, what else
And
we got?
one thing I wanted to mention about one of the emails, that Neil Kelly guy um was at like 5 meetings, and one of them was labeled Election Day Disruption Project. I'm not exactly sure what that was about. Election Day Disruption Project, not
Is Neil Kelly
prevention.
a printer technician?
I don't know. No, no,
Disruption
no.
Day. Have we done a follow-up
Yeah.
PRR to find out what the Disruption Day is?
No. As a matter of fact, this is breaking news because I just found it right before we
Disruption.
came on
Jeez.
air.
No, that's
Let's
interesting.
I
look
was
into
pulling
that.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was pulling
Yeah.
all the emails out
It
that
sounds
they
like
were
Election Day.
attending.
Total disruption. I've
I
never.
don't know. It was
I
for the 2024 election because it
Oh,
was
okay.
June 2024.
Okay, so not the 2022 election. All right.
Well, look,
Disruption Day.
here's
Yeah.
what we've recognized through all of this is the more the public rises up and asks questions and tries to hold the government accountable, the more the government is going to try and find ways to not be held accountable.
Mhm.
So we're looking at cases where they're now under what's supposedly a more conservative board of supervisors, a more conservative county recorder. We're finding more and more public records being denied, things that we have historically got access, even under Stephen Richer. And we're finding that they're now trying to invoice us and charge us incredible amounts of money
Yeah.
to access records.
Yeah.
And we're also finding that they're using personal emails and other means by which to communicate in order to prevent the public from being able to inspect those records. But we're on to them, right, Kimberly? And we're going to keep working on breaking through those obstacles they're putting in our way and getting those records. Do you want to talk any more about some of the things that you're looking into or have looked into, or any of the documents you submitted earlier before we wrap it up?
Well, I try to be very respectful of their time. and I could put individual, and this is what I did for easy for them to track, easy for us to track. I put the same exact PR in so they could do a different PR number for each person that I wanted communications with, but I wanted them with the same people because they were all on this, they're in on it together. Um, and when they responded, they all lumped it together and then said, "This is too expensive. It's too much work." And I'm like,
Yeah.
it's so easy to just hit copy over here, find all them and put it on a disk and send it to her, electronically.
Right.
I don't even, they send everything electronically. So it should be easy for them. And they're really dragging their feet that they do not want um, me to have this stuff. And when I asked for communications for Richard's private email, they're saying, "Oh, you got to contact him for that."
Oh,
And
if
I
he was
know
using
he's
it for
done.
public purposes.
He was using it for government purposes. I know that for a fact. So the fact that they want me to contact him for it, I doubt Richard's going to say, "Oh, sure, Kimberly, here's all my email." He's not going to do it. So
No,
that's another
Google
follow up,
delete
I
trash.
guess.
Right.
Yeah.
This is why we need President Donald Trump to focus on appointing a U.S. attorney for the District of Arizona that can not only look at the U.S. Attorney's Office and what's been happening and its coordination with local government agents in our elections, but be able to get some of these Gmail that people have been using, right? Because as Chris and I were discussing before the show, Gmail has absolutely no incentive to actually delete those Gmails from their server, unless they implicate Gmail in a crime. Why would they get rid of them? Because they could mine them. Hell, they could use them against them.
Well, I mean, they already
Right.
do in some ways use it to figure out algorithms on
Right.
what ads to provide
Right.
you and
Uh-huh.
all those different things. I mean, they're geofencing all that data. So I agree. I mean, data harvesting is a big industry. So I can't imagine those emails are gone. Well, thank you for all your hard work, Kimberly. And we really appreciate you looking into this. And this is pretty, to me, a pretty big deal. And it's leading us down a path to, I think, expose some pretty big plays on corruption. And so we look forward to having you back in a couple weeks to really focus in on what the findings are and where we're at with some of these public records that we're fighting. So thank you for all your hard work. We love having you be a part of the team, and God be with you tonight.
All right,
Peace.
great. Thanks for having me on. All
Thanks
right,
for being
peace.
here.
So what are your thoughts? Final thoughts from you, Brian?
Oh, God. I don't know if I have any final thoughts. I'm a lawyer. You asked me my final thoughts. I might just sit up here and give you a dissertation for a few hours. But, I'll try to avoid doing that. But my final thoughts are this, right? If our government actors are intentionally using personal private email, right? And it doesn't matter what party you are, right? Hillary Clinton did it. She had a server in her basement, and then they deleted everything, and nobody knows what was there, right? Well, what do you think was there? Was she violating the law? My guess is 100% yes. She was violating the law, and she deleted the mere fact that she had a server in her basement was a violation of federal law, right? And so she's conducting secure transactions from this unsecure server in violation of law. But the Republicans did the same thing under President George Bush Jr., right? They ran all of their emails through the RNC's server, and somebody wanted to look at those emails. And so the RNC hit the delete button, boom, gone, right? And nobody knows what the communications were. And so this is the problem when our government officials communicate via mechanisms not designed to intentionally avoid a capture of those communications, then it's hiding from the American public what our government officials are doing. And that should be a criminal act. So,
Well, even meeting all these obstacles, we are still working as a team to bring forward honesty and transparency in our government and our elections. So we're going to keep fighting through this. I do not want to become South Carolina. We dealt with some teams, some grassroots teams in other states, and they're being priced out of public records. They don't have provisions like we do here in Arizona, and they've made public records so unaffordable
right.
that the public can't afford to inspect records. So we have to really put a focus and an emphasis on public records laws and making sure that the business that our government conducts is open and transparent and publicly available to the people.
Right.
And as Brian said, the best thing you can do is put in public records requests, learn how to submit a FOIA to a federal agency, learn how to put in a public records request into your local government. Because if we don't keep the pressure on our elected officials and those that we hire to run our government, we will always face these forms of black box operating and this dark cloud around our government. So help bring transparency to light and reach out to us if you need anything. And thank you for joining us. And we will see you next week where we're going to talk about the executive order and Doge.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Have a blessed Monday. Take care.
Is it Doge or Doggy? I don't know.
Doji?
Doji?
Doji.
Doji. Peace.